A millionaire needs a fake girlfriend to impress his former lover, but he never expected that he would truly fall in love. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The night was thick with city lights, each skyscraper window glowing like a watchful eye. In the midst of this glittering skyline, the man who seemed to have everything was quietly unraveling. Nathaniel Cole, 32 years old, heir to the Cole Enterprises fortune, sat in the back of his sleek black town car. His posture was perfect, his tailored suit immaculate, but his thoughts betrayed him. Tomorrow he was expected to attend the annual charity gala, the very same event his former fiancée, Victoria Hale, would also attend. She had moved on quickly, flaunting her new engagement to a European aristocrat. The media had already taken sides, whispering that Nathaniel had lost, that he was yesterday's news. For a man like Nathaniel, losing face was not just a bruise to his pride, it was a weapon handed to his enemies. Investors, board members, and competitors were circling like sharks. He needed to project stability, control, and the perfect image. That was when his best friend and advisor suggested a desperate solution. Appear with someone unexpected, someone who could silence Victoria's smug laughter. Across the city, in a much humbler part of town, Emily Carter was rushing from her second job at a small bookstore. Her clothes smelled faintly of coffee grounds and old paper, and her sneakers were worn at the soles. At 27 years old, Emily carried burdens no one her age should have to bear. Her younger brother needed tuition, her mother's medical bills piled up, and her paycheck barely covered rent. She had long ago given up the luxury of thinking about herself. Every dollar she earned was already claimed before it even touched her bank account. That evening, as she left the bookstore, a sudden downpour caught her without warning. She pulled her thin jacket tighter, shielding a worn leather notebook she always carried. It was filled with sketches, fragments of poetry, and private thoughts she never dared to share. She darted into the only open building for cover, a luxurious hotel lobby that gleamed with marble floors and golden light. She knew she did not belong there, but for one moment she allowed herself to breathe in warmth. Nathaniel entered that same lobby from the opposite side, his polished shoes echoing against the marble. His driver held an umbrella above him, but Nathaniel moved with the unshakable air of a man accustomed to doors opening before he even touched them. Yet when his gaze fell upon Emily, damp hair clinging to her face, clutching that notebook as if it were treasure, something faltered in his expression. She looked completely out of place in the grand setting, and yet undeniably real. Their eyes met, a flicker, a collision neither of them had prepared for. "Sorry," Emily murmured, stepping aside quickly, cheeks flushing red. She knew she should leave before someone asked her what she was doing there. But Nathaniel did not move past her. Instead, he studied her as if an idea had just sparked alive. Something reckless. Something that might solve his problem. He saw no calculation in her, no polish, no facade, and maybe that was exactly what he needed. "Wait," his voice carried the quiet authority of a man used to being obeyed. "What is your name?" Emily hesitated, gripping her notebook tighter. Emily Carter." Nathaniel nodded slowly, a plan crystallizing in his mind. For the first time that night, he felt a sliver of control returning. Perhaps fate had just handed him the most unlikely answer. And Emily, drenched from the storm and unaware of the storm she was about to step into, had no idea her life was about to change forever. Nathaniel's gaze lingered on Emily with a quiet intensity, as if the storm outside had delivered her straight into his world for a reason. The driver shifted uneasily, waiting for instructions, but Nathaniel lifted a hand, dismissing him. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so that only Emily could hear. "I have a proposal," he said, each word deliberate. "It may sound unusual, but it could benefit both of us." Emily's fingers tightened around her notebook, her instinct telling her to leave, yet curiosity anchored her in place. "A proposal?" she asked carefully. "From a stranger I just met in a hotel lobby?" Nathaniel's lips curved into the faintest shadow of a smile. Not that kind of proposal. I am expected to attend an important charity gala tomorrow evening. The woman I was once engaged to will be there, with her new fiancé. For reasons I would rather not explain, it is essential that I arrive with someone by my side. He studied her expression, gauging her reaction. Someone believable. Someone real. Emily blinked, unsure whether to laugh or to be offended. You cannot be serious. I am very serious, Nathaniel replied evenly. I need you to play the role of my girlfriend. For one evening, you would be compensated generously. The word compensated made Emily's pulse skip. Her first instinct was outrage. You want me to lie? Pretend to be someone I am not? Why me? Because you are not polished, Nathaniel answered without hesitation. You are not rehearsed. You are not like the women in my circle, who would see this as a performance to advance themselves. You feel genuine. Emily's face burned, torn between indignation and the sting of truth. She was genuine because she was struggling. Genuine because she had nothing to hide. Genuine because she could not afford the luxury of pretense. I do not even know you, she said. You could be anyone. This could be some ridiculous trap. Nathaniel extended a hand, his voice calm but commanding. My name is Nathaniel Cole. You can search it if you wish. I am not asking you to trust me blindly, but I am asking you to consider what I am offering. A single night, one event. Enough money to, let us say, clear a month or two of your burdens. Emily froze. The mention of money sliced through her defenses. Rent, overdue bills, her mother's prescriptions, her brother's tuition, each weighed on her like invisible chains. The temptation pressed against her chest. And what happens when your former fiancé discovers I am not who you claim I am? She asked, her voice edged with defiance. Then it will be my responsibility to shield you, Nathaniel replied smoothly. The risk is mine. All you must do is walk beside me, hold my hand, smile when necessary, and endure one evening of luxury you are not accustomed to. Nothing more. Emily shook her head slowly, overwhelmed. This is insane. I work 2 jobs. I do not own a dress for a gala. I would not know which fork to pick up at a table set for 20 courses. Nathaniel's eyes softened, but only slightly. Then I will provide what you need. The dress, the car, the introductions. Consider it part of the arrangement. The word arrangement clung to the air, heavy and undeniable. Emily's silence stretched. The storm outside rattled the hotel windows, as if demanding an answer. Finally, she exhaled, her voice low. This goes against every rule I have lived by, but I cannot pretend the money does not matter. My family needs me. Nathaniel inclined his head. Then let us call it a contract. Clear terms, no confusion. He retrieved a sleek black card from his wallet and placed it in her trembling hand. Think it over. Call me by midnight. If you decline, nothing more will be said. If you accept, tomorrow your life may look very different. Emily stared at the embossed letters on the card, her reflection faint in the polished surface. She had stepped into the hotel only to escape the rain, yet she was leaving with a decision that could alter everything she thought she knew about herself. As Nathaniel departed, the echo of his footsteps lingered in the marble hall. Emily clutched the card, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and impossible hope. She whispered to herself, "What am I getting into?" And somewhere in the back of her mind, she already knew her answer. The following morning, Emily stood before the mirror in her small apartment, still half convinced she had dreamed the entire encounter. But the black card lying on her kitchen table was proof that it had been real. She had called the number just before midnight, her voice shaking as she said yes. Now she was about to step into a world she had only glimpsed through glossy magazines and storefront windows. At exactly 9 o'clock, a sleek black car pulled up outside her building. The driver, dressed immaculately, opened the door with a polite nod. Emily climbed in, her worn sneakers tapping against the polished floor. The interior smelled faintly of leather and cedar, a far cry from the scent of coffee and dust that usually clung to her clothes. When she arrived at Nathaniel's townhouse, she felt her knees weaken. The building rose like something out of another century, with stone columns and glass that gleamed like ice. She followed the butler inside, clutching her notebook as if it were a lifeline. Nathaniel was already waiting in the grand living room, his posture flawless, a cup of black coffee in hand. "Miss Carter," he greeted smoothly, his tone formal but not unkind. "You came." Emily forced herself to nod. "I said I would." He gestured for her to sit, and moments later a woman swept in carrying garment bags and boxes. "This is Clarissa," Nathaniel explained. "She will help you prepare. The gala requires more than simply showing up. You will need to learn how to move, how to speak, how to belong." Emily's cheeks burned. "I am not sure I can pretend to be something I am not." Nathaniel's gaze softened, though his words remained precise. "You are not pretending to be someone else. You are simply borrowing my world for a night. The rest is a matter of polish." The next hours unfolded in a blur. Clarissa had Emily stand, sit, and walk while balancing a book on her head. She corrected her posture, adjusted her gestures, and instructed her on how to offer her hand with grace. Every mistake made Emily laugh nervously, but each correction brought her a step closer to the role she had agreed to play. "You will be introduced as my girlfriend of several months," Nathaniel explained, his voice calm, as if delivering a business strategy. "You will not answer questions about where we met. Leave that to me. You will smile when I squeeze your hand. If I introduce you to someone, respond with warmth, but do not overshare. These people thrive on details they can twist." Emily frowned. "So you want me to lie without lying?" Nathaniel allowed himself a faint smile. "Precisely." Clarissa unveiled the dress at last, a floor-length gown of midnight blue, shimmering softly beneath the chandelier light. Emily's breath caught. She had never worn anything so beautiful. Nathaniel studied her reaction with quiet satisfaction. "It suits you," he said simply. Emily looked down at the gown, then at her calloused hands. "I am going to trip in this, or spill something, or say the wrong thing. Then we will rehearse," Nathaniel replied. He extended his arm, and though hesitant, Emily placed her hand on it. He guided her across the room, correcting her step, her rhythm, her balance. At first it felt absurd, like children playing pretend, but then she caught sight of their reflection in the tall mirror. For a fleeting second, they looked convincing. Between lessons, Emily glimpsed the man beneath the millionaire's mask. Nathaniel made her tea when her voice grew hoarse. He covered her with a soft cashmere throw when she shivered in the drafty room. His gestures were subtle, but they chipped away at the image she had of him as a cold, untouchable figure. By the time the clock struck evening, Emily was exhausted. Yet she had learned to hold her head high, to smile without fear, and to stand beside Nathaniel as though she belonged there. As she prepared to leave, Nathaniel spoke quietly. "Tomorrow will test you, Emily. They will look at you as though you do not belong. But remember this, your presence is already enough. All you must do is stay by my side." Emily met his gaze, surprised by the steadiness in his tone. She nodded slowly, her heart racing with both dread and anticipation. For the first time, she wondered if this arrangement was more than a transaction. Perhaps it was the beginning of something neither of them could yet define. The night of the gala arrived, and the city shimmered with anticipation. Towering hotels glowed against the dark sky, their windows casting light across the bustling streets. For most people, this evening was entertainment. For Nathaniel and Emily, it was a stage on which their fragile arrangement would be tested. The black limousine rolled smoothly to a stop in front of the grand ballroom. Emily's palms were damp as she clutched her small clutch bag, her heart pounding so loudly she feared the driver might hear it. She wore the midnight blue gown Nathaniel had chosen, its fabric flowing like water every time she moved. Her hair, swept up elegantly by Clarissa's skillful hands, revealed a grace Emily had never seen in herself before. Nathaniel, seated beside her, looked as if he had stepped out of a magazine. His tuxedo was tailored to perfection, his cufflinks catching the light with every movement. He reached over, covering her trembling hand with his steady one. "Remember," he said quietly, "you are not here to prove yourself to anyone. You are here to stand by me. That is all." Emily nodded, inhaling deeply as the chauffeur opened the door. Cameras flashed instantly, the blinding lights swallowing her as Nathaniel offered his arm. She stepped out, her heels striking the marble steps. And in that moment, all her training seemed to vanish. But Nathaniel's calm presence anchored her. She lifted her chin, allowed herself a small smile, and the crowd murmured in approval. Inside the ballroom, Chandeliers spilled golden light across the sea of glittering gowns and tuxedos. Waiters moved with precision, carrying trays of champagne. Conversations mingled in the air like a symphony of pride and power. Nathaniel guided Emily through the crowd, introducing her with the smooth confidence of a seasoned diplomat. "This is Emily Carter, my partner," he said, his hand resting lightly at the small of her back. Some smiled politely. Others raised eyebrows. Emily caught the flicker of skepticism in their eyes, but she forced herself to stand tall. She repeated names carefully, offered warm but measured replies, and let Nathaniel steer the rhythm of each encounter. And then, like a shadow across the room, Victoria appeared. Dressed in a gown of shimmering silver, her posture radiated triumph. On her arm was her new fiancé, a tall aristocrat whose accent and title alone seemed to impress the surrounding guests. Victoria's gaze landed on Nathaniel, and her lips curved into a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Nathaniel," she purred, her voice sweet but laced with mockery. "It has been far too long. And who is this?" Her eyes slid to Emily, lingering with thinly veiled disdain. Nathaniel's expression did not falter. He drew Emily closer. "This is Emily Carter, my girlfriend." Victoria's smile froze for a fraction of a second before she recovered. "How charming," she said, though the word dripped with disbelief. "And what do you do, Emily?" Emily's throat tightened. She remembered Nathaniel's warning, say little, offer warmth, never overshare. She forced herself to smile. "I support Nathaniel in every way that matters." The reply, simple yet unshakable, caused a ripple among the small circle of listeners. Some looked impressed, others intrigued. Nathaniel's lips quirked in the faintest sign of approval. Victoria, however, was not satisfied. She leaned closer, her voice a low whisper, meant only for Emily. "Do you truly think you belong here? Women like you are nothing more than passing entertainment." Emily's chest tightened, but she did not retreat. She met Victoria's gaze, steady and unflinching. "Perhaps, but at least I am not afraid to stand beside him." Victoria's eyes flashed with anger, but before she could reply, Nathaniel smoothly interjected, leading Emily away with a firm hand on her arm. "You handled that well," he murmured once they were out of earshot. Emily exhaled, only then realizing she had been holding her breath. "I felt like I was going to faint." "But you did not," Nathaniel said softly, "and that is what matters." As the evening wore on, Emily found herself moving more easily through the crowd. Each small victory, the smile of a board member, the polite nod of a rival gave her strength. By the time the orchestra began to play, she no longer felt like a stranger in borrowed silk. She felt, for a moment, as though she belonged. Nathaniel led her to the dance floor, his hand steady at her waist. As the music swelled, Emily realized something dangerous. This was supposed to be an act, a performance. Yet when Nathaniel's eyes held hers beneath the crystal chandeliers, the line between reality and pretense blurred in ways she could not deny. The orchestra played softly, the rhythm carrying Nathaniel and Emily across the dance floor. She focused on each step, careful not to stumble, but gradually she realized she was no longer counting. She was moving naturally, guided by his hand and steadied by the unwavering way he looked at her. For the first time that evening, she allowed herself to breathe. Her heart was still racing, but it was no longer from fear. Something about the way Nathaniel's hand rested at her back felt protective, grounding. The crowd around them blurred, until it seemed like only the two of them remained beneath the chandeliers. "You are doing well," Nathaniel murmured, his voice low enough for only her to hear. Emily gave a small laugh. "That is only because you are leading." "Perhaps," he replied, "but you are stronger than you realize." The music ended, and polite applause echoed across the room. Nathaniel guided Emily from the floor, but instead of returning to the main hall, he led her toward the terrace. Outside, the air was crisp, carrying the scent of roses from the manicured gardens below. Emily stepped closer to the railing, gazing out over the city lights. "It is beautiful," she whispered. Nathaniel studied her quietly. "Do you know, I have stood on this terrace many times, yet tonight, it feels different." Emily turned to him, surprised by the honesty in his tone. "Because of me?" "Because you are not pretending," Nathaniel said simply. "Everyone in there wears a mask. You do not. That makes you rare. Emily looked away quickly, her cheeks warming. Rare does not mean I belong here. You saw the way they looked at me, especially her. Victoria's opinion is irrelevant, Nathaniel replied firmly. She thrives on making others feel small. Do not give her that power. Emily met his gaze, searching for any trace of mockery, but found none. For a fleeting moment, she saw not the billionaire businessman, but a man carrying his own wounds, a man who chose strength because weakness was never allowed. Their silence lingered, charged with something unspoken. Emily gripped the railing, fighting the strange pull between them. This was not supposed to feel real. She reminded herself that it was only an arrangement, a contract, yet her heart betrayed her with every beat. The sound of footsteps broke the moment. A waiter appeared, offering champagne. Nathaniel accepted a glass and handed it to Emily. She hesitated before taking a careful sip. The bubbles tickled her lips, the taste foreign but oddly intoxicating. They returned inside, and the evening continued with more introductions, more subtle tests. Yet Emily noticed a change. Whenever she faltered, Nathaniel was there with a steady hand or a quiet word. Whenever she doubted herself, his presence reminded her she was not alone. Later, as the gala drew to a close, Emily slipped away to catch her breath in a quiet hallway. She leaned against the wall, exhausted, when Nathaniel found her. You exceeded my expectations, he said gently. Emily shook her head. I almost ruined everything. I almost fainted when Victoria spoke to me. But you did not, Nathaniel reminded her. You stood your ground. That strength cannot be taught. Emily wanted to argue, but instead she whispered, maybe I was strong because you were there. Nathaniel's expression softened, and for a moment his hand brushed against hers. The contact was brief, yet it sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the cold marble walls. As they left the gala together, the cameras flashing once more, Emily knew something had shifted. The night had begun as a performance, a careful illusion, but the feelings rising between them no longer felt like part of any act. The following days after the gala unfolded in a whirlwind, the media splashed photographs of Nathaniel and Emily across glossy covers, their poised smiles scrutinized by the public. Headlines speculated about the mysterious woman who had captured the attention of one of the city's most eligible millionaires. Some praised her elegance. Others questioned her background. Emily tried to ignore it, returning to her normal routines, but normal no longer existed. Strangers recognized her at the bookstore, whispering behind their hands. Regular customers looked at her with curiosity rather than friendliness. Even her landlord made comments about her new lifestyle, as though her rent could suddenly be doubled. Nathaniel remained composed, but tension simmered beneath his calm exterior. In board meetings, he caught the calculating looks from investors who wondered whether this new relationship was genuine or a reckless distraction. The Cole name carried power, but power was fragile when paired with scandal. One evening, as Emily sat in Nathaniel's townhouse, flipping through her worn notebook, he entered the room, his jaw tight. Victoria is not finished, he said abruptly. Emily looked up. What do you mean? She has been feeding stories to the press, Nathaniel explained, implying that you are an imposter, that you are after my wealth. She wants to destroy your credibility before you can even build it. Emily's stomach clenched. And people will believe her, because she belongs to this world. I do not. Nathaniel stepped closer, his voice steady but edged with steel. Do not let her dictate who you are. You have already proven more courage than half the people in my circle. But the pressure continued to mount. At a private luncheon with board members, Emily accompanied Nathaniel, only to face thinly veiled questions. Where did you attend university? One asked smoothly. Emily admitted she had not been able to finish her degree because she worked 2 jobs to support her family. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Another asked with a smile too sharp, "And what are your long-term ambitions, Miss Carter? Surely you have thought about the kind of future a man like Nathaniel deserves." Emily swallowed her discomfort, answering honestly, "My ambition is to be someone my family can rely on. Everything else comes second." Though Nathaniel admired her sincerity, he could feel the disapproval ripple around the table. Later, in the car, Emily stared out the window, blinking back tears. "I am embarrassing you," she whispered. Nathaniel's hand tightened into a fist against his knee. "No, They embarrassed themselves with their arrogance. Yet the doubts gnawed at Emily. She began to wonder whether she was dragging Nathaniel down instead of helping him. Each headline, each whispered comment chipped away at her resolve. One night, as she returned to her apartment, she found her younger brother waiting for her. His voice trembled as he held up a magazine with her face on the cover. "Emily, people at school are talking. They are saying things about you. About us." The pain in his eyes cut deeper than any insult from strangers. Emily hugged him tightly, forcing strength into her voice. "It will be all right, I promise." But later, alone in her small bedroom, she stared at Nathaniel's card resting on her nightstand and felt the weight of every choice pressing down. She had agreed to this arrangement to save her family. Now it threatened to tear apart the very dignity she had fought to protect. For Nathaniel, the conflict grew as well. Investors began to question his judgment. The board demanded reassurance that his personal life would not jeopardize the company. Victoria, emboldened by every headline, moved closer to exposing the arrangement as a lie. The storm that had once brought Emily into Nathaniel's life now seemed to return, darker and more dangerous than before. And for the first time, both of them wondered whether the fragile line between pretense and reality could withstand the weight of the truth pressing to break free. The breaking point came sooner than either of them expected. It was another evening gala, this time hosted by one of Nathaniel's business partners. The ballroom sparkled, but the atmosphere was heavy, as though whispers traveled faster than the music. Emily stood beside Nathaniel, her smile carefully practiced, yet she felt the weight of every curious stare. Victoria made her entrance with deliberate flair, her silver gown shimmering as if to announce her triumph. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who knew she held a secret. And she did. Midway through the evening, as speeches quieted the room, Victoria raised her glass and spoke loudly enough for all to hear. "Is it not fascinating," she began, her tone dripping with false sweetness, "how quickly Nathaniel has moved on, from a woman of wealth and breeding to this mysterious Emily Carter? Does anyone truly know where she comes from, or what she wants?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. All eyes turned to Emily. Her heart pounded, her throat dry. She opened her mouth to respond, but Victoria pressed further. "Because if we are honest," Victoria continued, "this so-called romance feels remarkably convenient. A carefully staged performance, perhaps? I wonder, Nathaniel, how long you expect your board to tolerate such games." The room froze. Cameras flashed. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Nathaniel's jaw tightened, but before he could speak, one of the board members added fuel. "We have all wondered, Nathaniel. Perhaps now is the time to clarify matters." Emily's chest constricted. Shame, anger, and fear collided inside her. She wanted to scream that she never asked for any of this, that she only agreed to help. But she also knew the truth was a blade that could cut them both. She turned to Nathaniel, searching his face for reassurance. Yet in that moment, under the crushing weight of public scrutiny, he hesitated. The silence was brief, but it was enough. Tears burned at the corners of Emily's eyes. Without another word, she turned and walked swiftly out of the ballroom. Her heels echoed against the marble, each step shattering the fragile illusion they had built. Nathaniel followed, but by the time he reached the street, she was gone, swallowed by the night. Back in her apartment, Emily tore off the gown, her hands trembling. She collapsed onto her bed, clutching her notebook, whispering through sobs, "I should never have agreed to this." Lo? Across the city, Nathaniel sat alone in the back of his car, staring out at the passing lights. For the first time in years, he felt powerless. His silence had cost him more than his pride. It had cost him the one person who had dared to stand beside him without asking for anything in return. And in that hollow ache, both Nathaniel and Emily believed the story between them had come to its inevitable end. Nathaniel spent a sleepless night replaying the scene in his mind, the image of Emily's tearful eyes haunting him. For years, he had built his reputation on composure, on knowing exactly what to say in every situation. Yet when she needed him most, he had faltered. That silence was unforgivable. By morning, headlines blared with Victoria's accusations. "Nathaniel Cole's romance exposed?" splashed across every major outlet. Stockholders demanded answers. The board threatened emergency meetings. But for once, Nathaniel cared little about numbers or power. What mattered was Emily, and the fact that he had let her walk away, believing she was nothing more than a pawn. He made a choice. If his world demanded masks and facades, he would shatter them. That evening, at a press conference hastily arranged in the Cole Enterprises atrium, cameras crowded the space. Reporters buzzed like hornets, expecting Nathaniel to deny, deflect, or distance himself from Emily. Instead, he stepped to the podium, his gaze steady. "There have been rumors," he began, his voice strong. "Accusations that my relationship with Emily Carter is fabricated, that it was designed to serve an image." He paused, letting the weight of silence settle. "Those accusations are partly true. At first, I did ask Emily to stand beside me as part of an arrangement. But what began as an act became something real. Something I did not expect, but something I will not deny." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The reporters leaned forward, eager. Nathaniel continued. "Emily Carter is not a prop. She is not an imposter. She is the bravest, most genuine woman I have ever known. While others hide behind wealth and privilege, she stands with honesty. And last night, when she was attacked in this very circle, I failed her. I failed to protect her. That silence was my mistake, and I regret it more than any loss this company could ever face." The room erupted with questions, but Nathaniel raised his hand. "Say what you will about me, about my leadership, about my decisions, but do not question her worth, because I will defend her, not as part of any contract, but as the woman I love." The declaration was bold, reckless, and utterly uncharacteristic of the man known for restraint. Yet it rang with undeniable truth. Across town, Emily sat in her small apartment, the television flickering with Nathaniel's live speech. Her breath caught as she heard his words. She pressed her hand to her mouth, tears slipping down her cheeks. For the first time since the storm had swept her into his life, she realized he was no longer hiding behind power or pride. He was standing for her. And in that moment, Emily knew the story was not over. Something broken could still be mended if she found the courage to believe. Emily did not wait for the phones to stop ringing, or for the world to quiet down. She went straight to Nathaniel's townhouse that same night, her notebook clutched tightly in her hands. The butler opened the door with surprise, but Nathaniel himself appeared moments later, his tie loosened, his expression weary, yet alight with something raw the moment he saw her. "You watched it," he said softly, almost as a question. Emily nodded, her voice trembling. "You told the entire world the truth. You stood up for me, even when it cost you everything." Nathaniel stepped closer, his composure stripped away. "I should have done it sooner. I should have defended you that night instead of letting silence speak for me. But I swear to you, Emily, there is nothing fabricated about what I feel now. I love you. Not as a contract, not as an arrangement. I love you as the woman who walked into that hotel lobby drenched from the rain and still carried herself with dignity." Tears filled Emily's eyes, but this time they carried relief rather than despair. "Do you know what it meant to hear you say those words, not in private, but before the entire world? For once, I was not invisible. For once, someone saw me and chose me." Nathaniel reached for her hands, his grip steady. "And I will keep choosing you. Even if it costs me every ounce of wealth and every seat of power, I will choose you." Emily let out a shaky laugh. "I never cared about your money, Nathaniel. I only ever cared about whether you were real with me. And I will be real with you from this day forward," he promised. The weight that had pressed between them dissolved. For the first time since their lives had collided, Emily felt free, not trapped by debts or appearances, but lifted by the strength of something genuine. In the weeks that followed, the media storm raged, but the narrative shifted. Headlines no longer mocked Emily as an imposter. They began to paint her as the woman who stood unshaken in the face of scrutiny. Investors who doubted Nathaniel's judgment were silenced by the strength of his conviction and the clarity of his leadership. And Victoria's schemes, once sharp as knives, now dulled into irrelevance as the world turned its attention elsewhere. Months later, Emily found herself back on a grand ballroom floor, but this time without fear. She wore no borrowed gown, no mask of performance. She stood beside Nathaniel as herself, her hand in his, her smile unforced. The music swelled, and Nathaniel leaned close to whisper, "No more contracts, only us." Emily's heart swelled with certainty. Only us, she echoed. And in that moment, beneath the glow of chandeliers and the eyes of a watching world, their story closed not as a performance, but as a promise, proof that love born from pretense could end in truth, justice, and forever.